to bid or not to bid. This is the session that we had carried out earlier on when determining whether a tender should be accepted or not. We have done this process and reduced it from 4 days to a couple of minutes. In this session, we will be reviewing how to carry out and develop a competitive strategy for the bid that we have identified. In this context, we need a number of prompts. One of the distinguishing features of this strategy is that it will not be purely generated by AI, but we will be generating this using human AI augmentation. And for the simple reason that we believe that in AI on its own will not generate the best results. At the end of the day, your objective is not to minimize the time preparing the document, but it is to optimize the probability of success of the tender using the least time necessary to do it. And you can only achieve this by using also your tacit know-how. So we will be extracting some of your tacit know-how that is necessary to prepare the bid as part of the process. In carrying out the competitiveness strategy bidding process, we have prepared a number of prompts. And the prompts are divided into a series of elements. The first prompt is to generate a form which asks specific questions related to the bid that has been generated from the go or no-go decision. So what we will see is essentially from the prompt, you will essentially be provided an interactive form that identifies what are the key issues that have been identified from the go or no-go submission, evaluation. For example, one of the first cases was that we did not have a higher education institution reference of greater than or less than 750K within the last 4 years. So we need to address that. Has that been addressed, resolved, in progress, or unresolved? You need to resolve that issue and provide a brief description of how that been resolved. The insurance requirement, again, etc., etc. And in this case, the AI has identified 8 major issues, considerable issues that need to be addressed for the bid in order to be successful and in the process. And they need to be addressed. Once you complete all these 8 elements, which would take about between 8 to 10 minutes, you will need to identify who are the primary participants, any additional participants in the tender context, and also any context about the participants that would affect how the dialogue should be calibrated. Because the purpose of this form is really to generate further interactions with the human. And finally, a section on intelligence updates. Remember, the go or no-go decision was based on company intelligence, and there might have been some areas which need to be updated. So for the pre-populated parts and the human input which are necessary in order to make sure that the bid is up to date. Finally, the strategic priorities for the dialogue. So when we are preparing strategy, what are the key elements that need to be focused on with a particular emphasis? So we're saying win things, for example, evaluation structure and strategic intent. And once we get these up to date, we are copying the form for the first pass. So this is the first process. This will enable us to go to the second process, which is essentially generating a dialogue script that will be necessary to support the AI to give us the questions. Because in this case, the unit interaction necessary here, since the questions need to be tender specific, we have created prompts that extract significant and important questions from each tender separately and independently to scale, and eventually those questions will need to be answered in order to create a strategy. So we have 2 passes. We have a pass where there is a script that essentially extracts the type of questions that need to be asked. So opening this up, you can see how these are generated. As you can see, there are 4 inputs. You've got the go, no-go report, the company intelligence profile, the tender document, and the briefing form that we have seen earlier on. And this is a prompt generated from a prompt, essentially, but this is completely AI generated, and you don't need really to be involved in this. Once this prompt is generated, then you will be channeled to a dialogue. A brief dialogue where the AI will ask you a series of questions based on the strategic intent, the client analysis, and the evaluation structure. A case in point here is, for example, the Irish higher education visible dimension. We've got the Warwick Business School engagement resolves the qualification gap. We have done that as an addressed criterion. The competitiveness single dimension, winning this contract against Deloitte in an EU threshold open procedure at one of Ireland's most prominent institutions would be a significant market signal. And we are required as a human to provide a reaction to what the AI is suggesting that it says. For brevity perspective, I'm saying I agree and confirm all points. Okay. However, I can propose changes and recommendations accordingly to what I feel is necessary. And this is, I'm going to submit the response. It is asking me to confirm. I move on and confirm, and I proceed to a 4th element. And in the 4th element, it is asking me for the win things. In this case, what are the things that need to be highlighted when I try to win the strategy, win this bid? So we've got several candidates. We've got candidate win team 1. Proprietary methodology, for example, Meridian's digital maturity assessment framework is the only proprietary diagnostic tool validated specifically across Irish public sector organizations. The AI would not have invented this. It would have extracted the information from the company intelligence profile, something which we have not demonstrated in our sessions, but which we'll be showing at the workshop which we are going to organize. A second candidate is partner-led delivery, and the third one is vendor independence. And your task is to react to all 3 candidates, for each one confirm, challenge, or sharpen. For brevity perspective, I will be saying that I confirm. Okay? And I will be submitting the response. Another challenge is the win themes. It is asking me a third part. Deloitte counterclaim, our global higher education practice has delivered digital maturity assessments at 200 plus universities, and it is asking the question under challenge and another challenge. So for each challenge theme, does it hold up? Does it need sharpening, or should we modify the claim? And for brevity perspective, I say the claims hold up. But obviously, in a realistic scenario, you can actually strengthen the cases, or alternatively say that example is not good and we should get a further example. Finally, I click on confirm things and record, and I view the summary, so what has been achieved in the whole process. All of this input then will lead me to the final result, the final outcome, which is the positioning strategy. So taking all these inputs together, there is another prompt that goes into the positioning strategy. And when you look at the positioning strategy, it is divided as follows. So you've got a structured overview of all the areas. So we've got from strategic intent up to submission narrative framework. What is the strategic intent statement? The client strategic driver analysis, what Trinity is trying to achieve, what success looks like to them in 2 years, what they are most afraid of getting wrong, the evaluation structure based on the award criteria, and how we are likely to fare in each one, and what are the win themes. So what you have 3 win themes. So we've got those which have been extracted. Maturity assessment is the only proprietary diagnostic tool validated specifically across Irish public sector, general partner-led delivery, absolute vendor independence, etc. We also have this competitive displacement strategy against the Big Four, against missed markets, and preemption of Deloitte's strongest claim. Now, this is founded not just on AI interpretation, but also on human interpretation, which we think is fundamental in this context. Compliance and risk mitigation plan, what has been resolved and what needs to be in process, as well as a pricing strategy, option A, B, and C. There is also pending human confirmation. The pricing option can be confirmed without human's commercial decision, and the submission narrative framework, how it is carried out, the candidate submission narrative, what is it, and what not to say also in the tender document. Finally, there is the part where we have the bid writing brief, what needs to be included, the win themes, what must appear, and the evidence map criterion by criterion. So this is in a nutshell for the position that needs to be generated for positioning strategy. In total, this can be generated in around 30 minutes, but it is a time worth investing, I repeat, because this will provide the basis on which you can write a winning bid for your company and optimizing the probability of success in the result. Thank you very much.